Hello, today we're going to change the oil on a Krogen Express 52, and the great news is it couldn't be much easier. With the stand-up walk-in engine room and the reverse oil change system, it just doesn't get much easier. This particular boat has the brand new 440 common rail engines, which have a cover over the top of the engines, which actually has to be removed to get at one of the filters. But otherwise, the procedure is going to be exactly the same on any other 52 that is equipped with Yanmars. We have an oil change procedure we put together that is specific to the boat, that mimics what's in the your Yanmar manual, and so we're going to follow that procedure as we go, and you'll find that in the owner section of our website. The first thing is to check the engine oil level cold, just to get a baseline on where we are, and that'll help you with knowing how much to add based on how much you took out and so on. So we're going to check this one, and it's actually, the oil looks brand new. This engine only has 50 hours, so she's getting her first 50-hour oil change. She hasn't used any. She might even be just a little bit over full, which is something generally you want to avoid. There's a little bit of margin there, but we don't recommend necessarily running the engines over the top line level. So with that, knowing where we are, we're going to go up and start the engines and run them for maybe 5 minutes or so, just to get them warmed up a little bit, and then we'll be back down to continue the process. So we've run the engines just frankly for a couple of minutes. We watched the temperature raise up a little over 90 degrees. They're not hot to the touch, but it's just enough to get the oil warmed up. And while the reverso system doesn't require it, Yanmar does suggest that you warm the engine up just a little bit. A little more than what we did is probably fine too, but either way, it's not required. I should mention that on our oil change list, we have a set of things you'll need. It calls out that you want to have 2 or 3 buckets. You want to have a set of paper towels, masking tape, the tools you need, etc., etc. So you can refer to that list when the time comes, if you haven't done this before. As we mentioned earlier, I think the 440 common rail engine has a pretty cover over the top, which is nice, but it is a little bit in the way for what we're trying to do. So we're going to take it. It's got a zip tie on it that's holding a hose, so we're just going to lay it back, and now we've got access to the 2 filters. You can see that these are still painted, which says that they're brand new. That's the way the factory does these. So this, again, is getting its first oil change. I'm actually going to rotate this back and access the oil filler cap, which again is the same, I think, on the 440s and the 480s, virtually identical. We want to take the oil filler cap off so that the oil drains out faster. It basically breaks the air gap, so the oil drains faster. I've knocked a hole already in this filter. I'm going to do this one now, and we're using a Phillips here, but you can do it with a slotted, or an awl is really the best if you have a pointed awl. Just pop a hole in there. I used my hand. As you can see, you can tap it with a hammer. That will also do the trick. So the engine's ready now, and we're going to go down here, and on the Krogen Express, all of the boats you'll see will be equipped with the valve coming out of the engine oil pan, and like any ball valve, you just rotate it to where it's in line with the hose, and that engine's ready to drain. Now we'll head over to the reverso and get the process started. So the first thing we're going to do is take the hose. It's usually wrapped up on a hook here, and we're going to put it down in the bucket. And I want to caution you, the worst thing that can happen while you're doing this is if the hose pops out of the bucket. You'll make a heck of a mess if you do that. So we generally will hold the hose. You may have a bucket that's got a small hole in the top instead of the wide open bucket, and that works well too, because you can just shove the hose down in the smaller hole and it tends to stay in place a little bit easier. But make sure you watch the hose and don't let it come out of the bucket. Hate to state the obvious there, but it's a disaster if you mess that up. So the reversos on our boats, on all of the newer boats, have 5 ports, 1 for each engine, 1 for each transmission, and 1 for the generator. And we're going to open the valve for the port engine here, because that's the engine we're working on. We just turn it 90 degrees. It's in line with the hose then, and that means it's open. You can see the rest are closed. And then the switch on this one is on the far side, and there's a fill position which allows you, if you want to pull oil in, and there's a drain position that will drain it. So we're going to pull it to the left here, and get the process going, and we'll listen for the sound, and as the sound changes, you'll know that it's actually doing its job. You might point down in the bucket and you can see that it's oil, in fact, is coming out in a pretty steady stream, and you can hear the fact that the pump actually changed. And we're just going to let it run until we have plenty of capacity in the bucket. We're just going to let it run until it stops. Looks like we got about a gallon already, best I can tell. The oil's got 50 hours on. Looked pretty clean on the dipstick, but not quite as clean going into the buckets, so certainly it's due. As you probably know, the Yanmars are supposed to be changed at 50 hours and then every 250 after that, so it's 300, 550, etc. The other thing I would mention to you, we're not doing an oil sampling on this particular oil change, but we highly recommend that you do that along the way, particularly after the first change or two. Not a bad idea to do it from day one, but certainly once you start to get a few hours on the engine, the oil sampling is predictive for you. So if you have anything maybe going questionably wrong, maybe you have an injector, for example, that's not working quite right, and you see elevated diesel levels in your oil, it lets you know that you need to be checking your injectors, your fuel delivery system. Certainly if you have wear metals or something else, that would do it too. So you can see we're getting to the end here. You can hear the pump has changed, and it's kind of spitting a little bit, and I did get a splatter or two as it started to do that, so I'm pointing it at the edge of the bucket here to keep from making a mess. We're going to let it go another few seconds here and figure we pretty well have it handled then. Alright, I'd say the engine is pretty well empty. What's left is just in the hose. And that's how you get the oil out of the engine. Then of course I'm going to close the valve as well. Once I let the hose drain as much as possible, we'll close this valve off. So we finished draining the oil, and we plugged the end of the drain hose to make sure that it doesn't drip out and make a mess, and then frankly we tucked it in a high location. In addition, that certainly has the potential to make a little bit of a drippy mess in your engine room, so do manage the hose. Most of the time we'll put a barb fitting with a plug on to plug the hose. Some people just stuff some paper towel in there, but whatever you do, you want to keep that from dripping and making a mess of your nice engine room. So the next thing we're going to do, of course, is get the valve closed. It's often something that it's easily forgotten, but if you don't, you're going to end up with clean oil going down in that hose, new oil, and you don't really want that to be the case. The next thing we're going to do is get the oil filters off, and I think I mentioned earlier they're painted, so you know that they're brand new in the first change. They'll be white, of course, after that. We've put tape over the hole on the back one here, and we're going to do the same thing on the one on the front, just to keep it from leaking through that hole as we turn it. So we'll put a piece of tape on there. And then we're going to stuff I took a piece of paper towel and folded it up a little bit, and we're going to stuff it down in here in the reservoir here, so as the oil, whatever oil we don't catch, will just drain onto the paper towel, and we can pull it right back out without leaving any mess at all. And then this is a trick that over the years we figured out. Some people have told us that even with these horizontal filters, they can get them off with very little dripping, doing what we're doing, but we like to do this as an extra piece of insurance. And we're just going to slide the bag over the filter, get in there, and then as the filter loosens up, you'll see us do this, but we're going to pull it up into the slot here as the filter comes back, and that will catch the small remaining amounts of oil that almost none will end up on our paper towel. We've got a metal oil filter wrench here. You might find this strap one just a little bit easier. On the 440s in particular, you've got some fuel injector lines that are a little bit in the way of this filter wrench. And I actually cracked it loose a little bit. I rehearsed, but we're going to start loosening the filter here and get it to where it's hand tight. And as soon as it gets a little loose, we're going to start trying to work this bag up into the slot here. just to try to catch any dripping from prevent any dripping from happening. So it's still fairly tight. I can't quite get it up in there, but pretty quickly here that'll start opening up enough that I can get the bag in there. Probably can turn it by hand at this point as well. Like they didn't paint the bottom side of the filter very well. Okay, now you can see that the bag is actually sliding up into the slot. Well, I had it there. There you go, it's up in the slot now, as you can see. Then we're just going to go ahead and turn it all the way off at that point. It's in the slot. The bag should catch anything that's going to drip, and anything that the bag doesn't catch will end up on our folded up paper towel there. We're close, and we're going to do our best not to have it come off of here and drop it. All right. There we go. Filter's off. A little bit of oil on the edge of the bag here, and literally none has made its way down onto the rag there. And then we're going to drain some into our bucket here. Try to drain out as much of the oil as we can, just to be a little bit responsible. There's not that much in here, in part because we put the hole in the top, and that helped take most of it out as it drains. So it sits high, and the hole lets the air out, or lets air in as it's draining. And there just really isn't that much in there at that point. If you've got a pan with a grate or something, and you can just let it sit in the pan and drain, that's a good idea too. But just get as much as you can out, so that environmentally you're not tossing an oil filter that's not drained. And then you can put it in your bucket and try to keep it upright. Have something to block it so that it stays upright and again doesn't make a mess. Stays in your bag, you're going to be in good shape. All right, then we'll pull the other oil filter off and come back and put the new ones on. So we've already installed our full or primary filter, and we're getting ready to install the bypass filter. And as our instructions say, and this is true of any engine, you want to lubricate the gasket just a little bit with either new or old oil, and so it's easily done with a finger, as I just did. The Yanmar instructions, and again this is pretty standard, the Yanmar instructions. So this is the 400 filter, which is the bypass filter, and we've already installed, as I said, the primary filter. So you can see that this is the 400. The 100, at least for this engine, again I think they're all the same, is they are specific. You need two different filters, and you can't put the wrong one in the wrong place. So Yanmar says screw the filter in until it contacts, and I can kind of see air down there, and as it's just kind of barely getting tight, it's contacted, and then they say another 3/4 of a turn after that. So I'm gonna kind of mark with my thumb here, and I'm gonna say, well, I got about a quarter, and then I got about another quarter there, and I'm gonna put one more quarter. Basically, it's about as hard as you can hand tighten it. For most of you, is probably going to be fine. It's just going to make it harder to get it off, but you definitely want it plenty tight that it doesn't loosen up and come off on you somewhere along the way. I'll also point out to you, this one, we lost a little oil when we were changing this one. It drained a little bit into the reservoir there, but the other one we didn't lose a drop using our method. I think what happened is these new filters with the paint on them didn't like our masking tape, and so we had some trouble getting the masking tape to stick to the hole, but the masking tape will stick fine to the regular unpainted filters. So we're going to rotate our cover back in place here if we can. Just got to find the studs and pop it on there. There we go. And We've got a fairly large filter here. Now again, I mentioned earlier that you can add the oil back in using the reverso. We tend, because the engine room is so spacious, we tend to just do it the old-fashioned way by pouring it in. So we're going to start adding oil, and again, obviously a nice funnel will help us avoid making a mess. So we'll come back to you in a little bit when you don't have to watch us put all the oil in here, but we'll get the appropriate amount of oil, checking the level as we go, and understanding that it's not going to show the level. We've got a screen in this funnel, and it's going rather slowly, but we're going to check the level as we go and make sure that we're not overfilling. So, but we know that we took out probably 3.5 or 4 gallons came out of this engine, so we'll probably start with the 3.5 or so gallons, and then we'll start checking the level and make sure that it's full. And we'll see you at the end. We've had a little fun in the engine room here today on this Krogen Express, and we finished up our oil change with the exception that in the end we'll come back in a couple hours and check the level. But one of the things that we did is we took a Sharpie and we've marked on the filters the hours and the day we made the change here, and I'd certainly recommend that. That's on your procedure that we've written up for you. Make sure the cap's back on. We did knock a screen out of our slow fill filter and our funnel and made it a fast fill funnel. We've topped it off to just under the fill level with 4 gallons. The capacity is just under 5 gallons, but there's some oil that stays in some coolers and things, and so typically you won't see that it'll take that full capacity. We'll come back in a couple hours here after it's drained back down and check it cold and see where it is. I'll also mention to you that as we ran the engine earlier, we watched the oil pressure, and we noticed that it's, and you will notice it's typical that it will be at zero pressure for just a couple of seconds, and as the pressure comes up to somewhere in the 40s, you know that the filters are pretty well full. So we ran the engine for just a minute or two to get the oil filling in the rest of the engine. Then we came back and topped the engine off to that fill level. And again, you want to avoid overfilling. That's it for today. Hope this helped. Again, the procedure is also on the Krogen Express website, and hope you enjoyed the video. We'll look forward to putting more together with you. Have a terrific day.